This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. Iran and Iraq today each went for the jugular, attacking one another's major oil centers, and the two nations reportedly stopped exporting oil through the Persian Gulf. Iranian planes made their deepest sortie into Iraq, bombing the vital oil centers at Kirkuk and Mosul. Iran also launched air and sea strikes against Iraqi oil terminals off Al-Fa Island and struck hard at major complexes at Zubair and Al-Shuyaba. Iraq struck back, bombing the huge Iranian refinery at Abadan for the third straight day. In addition, Iraqi bombers for the first time attacked Iran's main oil port at Karg Island, halting operations there, and a large oil complex at Bandar Khomeini. Around the disputed Shatt al-Arab estuary, the two countries fought a fierce sea battle, Iraq claiming to have sunk 2 Iranian frigates and 7 gunboats, Iran claiming to have sunk 4 Iraqi vessels. Meanwhile, the ground war intensified. 3 Iranian divisions containing some 20,000 men plus tanks were spread out along a 350-mile-long front. Confronting them were 3 Iraqi divisions, more than 40,000 troops, attacking Iran at 6 points along the border. The Iraqis captured a large area around Qasr-e-Shirin, the first Iranian town on the Baghdad-Tehran highway. Iraqi jets also hit several key Iranian targets along much of the 720-mile border. More on the fighting from Larry Pintak in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad.
Iraqi television tonight released these pictures, which are said to show some of the most recent fighting. Ground, air, and naval battles continued throughout the day. Baghdad claimed that the army had rolled deep inside Iran, while successful airstrikes are said to have been carried out against key towns. The Iraqis claimed numerous Iranian warplanes had been shot down, some reportedly crashing in residential areas of the capital. The fiercest fighting occurred in and around the oil ports of Basra in Iraq and Abadan and Muhammara in Iran. The cities are located on the strategic Shatt al-Arab waterway, which is the only outlet for the shipment of Iraqi oil. Baghdad reported heavy casualties in Basra, where it claimed both residential areas and the oil refinery were hit. On the Iranian side of the river, Abadan and Muhammara are said to be surrounded and in flames. The Deputy Chief of Staff of the Iraqi Armed Forces tonight told reporters his country has, as he put it, no covetous intentions on Iranian territory. He said Iraq tried diplomatic means to convince Iran to return border areas that Baghdad claims to be rightfully its territory, but the response, he said, was silence. Earlier in the day, Iraqi President Saddam Hussein met with a high-level Jordanian delegation, which arrived in Baghdad to lend support to Iraq. CBS News tonight managed to move out of the country through a long and circuitous route. This videotape of yesterday's air raids. Iranian warplanes were all but invisible during the dawn and dusk attacks on the capital, but Iraqi air defenses erupted as the airport and outskirts of the city were hit. The heart of the capital, too, was damaged as stray bombs and anti-aircraft rockets fell among the buildings.
The escalation pushes the conflict far beyond the bounds of a border dispute. Both governments would like to dominate the Gulf. By trading blows over each other's capitals, Baghdad and Tehran have issued one another with a direct challenge to that right. For either government, backing down now would mean giving up its claim to the Persian Gulf. Larry Pintak, CBS News, Baghdad.
The Persian Gulf countries, including Iran and Iraq, produce almost 19 million barrels of oil each day, most of it getting to the oil-consuming nations through the Straits of Hormuz. Control of that narrow passage is Iran's whole card in this conflict. Tehran warning that tankers en route to Iraq will be stopped. More on this from Don Cladstrom.
Warnings by Iran that ships entering the Persian Gulf do so at their own risk had a telling effect today. Oil tanker traffic appeared to be down sharply. Those that moved did so well south of the Iranian coastline, their operators anxious to avoid Iranian gunboats that might be in the vicinity. Many other tankers didn't move at all. About 100 ships were said to have come to a dead stop between Abu Dhabi and Qatar, awaiting word whether it's safe to proceed northward. The southern part of the Gulf was peaceful. Here, along the Straits of Hormuz, where virtually all oil from Persian Gulf producers passes. The late Shah called it the West's jugular vein, since almost 40% of the West's oil goes through here. One tanker every 40 minutes, about 80 a day, but not 2 day. How much more seriously tanker traffic might be disrupted if fighting spreads to the straits is a real concern to many. It would probably be impossible to physically block the 20-mile wide waterway, but that might not be necessary if Iran or some other country wanted to bring traffic to a halt. Threats by the government there already have taken their toll on traffic, and more threats could do even more harm. Even in peaceful times, there is little real protection for tankers entering the Persian Gulf. Aside from standard maritime laws and the tiny navies of several Gulf states, the ships are mostly on their own. Now, because of present hostilities, many tanking firms have decided, at least for the time being, that the risks are no longer worth it. Don Cladstrip, CBS News, near the Straits of Hormuz on the Persian Gulf.
Secretary of State Muskie said today that the United States is, quote, making plans for contingencies to keep the Straits of Hormuz open. He did not say what the plans are. At the White House, the Iran-Iraq war dominated President Carter's day, as Leslie Stahl reports.
After a lengthy meeting this morning with his top diplomatic, military, intelligence, and energy advisors, the president issued a carefully worded warning that free passage through the Persian Gulf must not be obstructed. He also reaffirmed U.S. neutrality in the conflict and tried to calm fears of spiraling oil prices by claiming that there is no immediate danger of serious oil shortages.
But even if this suspension of Iran and Iraqi shipments should persist for an extended period of time, the consuming nations can compensate for this shortfall. Oil inventories in the world's major oil-consuming nations are now at an all-time high. Of course, a total suspension of oil exports from the other nations who ship through the Persian Gulf region would create a serious threat to the world's oil supplies and consequently a threat to the economic health of all nations. Freedom of navigation in the Persian Gulf is of primary importance to the whole international community. It is imperative that there be no infringement of that freedom of passage of ships to and from the Persian Gulf region.
About the hostages, he called the conflict a dangerous situation, but said we haven't forgotten them and continue to hold Iran responsible for their safety.
Mr. President, if Iran asked for spare parts in return for releasing the hostages, would you go that far?
We're consulting through every means with Iran, as we have been for many months, to try to seek the release of the hostages, but that particular point would be better for me not to single out.
The U.S. is consulting with its allies on ways to keep the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf open. But officials will not comment on whether military measures are under consideration, if an international flotilla is being discussed, or if U.S. naval forces in the area have been put on standby military alert. President Carter has had no direct communications with Soviet Premier Brezhnev. Officials here note, however, that Secretary of State Muskie is scheduled to meet with Soviet Foreign Minister Gromyko tomorrow in New York. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
51 Americans in Baghdad, some of them dependents of officials at the U.S. interest section, others private citizens working there, were scheduled to go by bus today to Jordan, but Iraqi paperwork delayed their departure. 150 Americans working in Basra did make it to Kuwait today. 3 Americans at the Basra oil complex were reported missing. Egyptian President Sadat called for American intervention in the conflict, but he didn't say what kind of intervention. The Soviet Union called on Iran and Iraq to stop fighting or face possible American involvement. Both Cuban President Castro and PLO leader Arafat sent top representatives to the region to try to mediate an end to the war.
Corn goodness. Our brains competed in rugged games of skill to celebrate our harvest, rich in the goodness of maize, corn. Today, this goodness, corn oil goodness, is essential to Mazola margarine. So Mazola has no cholesterol, naturally, just vitamins A and D. And a fresh, delicious flavor, naturally. Taste Mazola margarine. It gets goodness from maize.
Mazola, corn goodness.
No other car offers it, foreign or domestic, only Cadillac. It's the exclusive new V864 fuel injection, the standard gasoline engine for all 1981 Cadillacs. As you start out, all 8 cylinders are in operation. As power needs lessen, the car automatically goes to 6 cylinders and then to 4 cylinders. When you need it, it instantly reverts to 8 cylinders again. Test drive V864. Only your Cadillac dealer has it.
When the Americans were captured in Iran almost a year ago, the United States imposed an embargo against the Tehran government, an embargo that included spare parts for American-made military equipment. The effects of that embargo are being felt now, as Ike Pappas reports.
Pentagon analysts say Iran is critically short of spare parts for its American-made weapons and may run out in what was described as a matter of days. Ammunition and jet fuel reserves are also said to be quite low, and according to the analysts, this could have a telling effect on Iran's ability to hold the line against Iraq. Despite the spare parts problem, the Iranian Air Force, according to Pentagon sources, has apparently performed well against the Iraqis. Several of the latest American-made F-14s were, in fact, used to attack Baghdad. How long the Air Force will continue to fly, however, is questionable. The Iranians have been able to purchase some spare parts from private sources in Europe. However, hundreds of tons of American spare parts, originally destined for Iran, but embargoed when the hostages were taken, sit in a warehouse at McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey. Officials reject the possibility that the embargo might be lifted as a goodwill gesture toward Iran. Said one defense source, "They'll get the spares when we get the hostages." Ike Pappas, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Since the fighting began, the New York independent speculators have boosted spot market prices of gasoline and home heating oil by about 8 cents a gallon. Major operators with plenty of fuel on hand are not expected to boost retail prices, at least immediately. Incidentally, OPEC, the world oil cartel, released a report today warning that 6 of its 13 members may have to stop exporting oil in the next 20 years to meet their own needs. The report named the 6 as Iran, Algeria, Venezuela, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Ecuador. The report was prepared before the Iran-Iraq war began. Ronald Reagan carefully avoided making the Iran-Iraq conflict itself a campaign issue today, but he did use it as an example of an oft-repeated Reagan campaign theme, U.S. military weakness. The decline of American military power, Reagan said, leaves the country no choice but to remain neutral. Bill Plant reports.
Pressed for comment this morning on the developing war situation, Reagan declined to answer. Reminded that the White House had released a series of past Reagan quotes to back up its charge that Reagan might use military force, the candidate brushed the matter aside.
I'm not going to bother every day trying to answer those things. The issue of this campaign is his record, and I'm just going to keep talking about it.
At the East Texas Fairgrounds in Tyler, Reagan told reporters he didn't know whether the conflict between Iran and Iraq would hurt the hostage situation. But in his rally speech, he proceeded to tie the fighting to one of his favorite themes, the state of the nation's defense.
Now, with the war dogs loose in one part of the world, we should be very conscious that in spite of the rhetoric we've been given from Washington, this nation does not have the capability at the moment to defend itself against outside aggression.
Later in the day, however, after conferring with former Texas Governor John Connally, among others, Reagan escalated his rhetoric. First, he told a Dallas television station that the situation between Iraq and Iran couldn't have happened if the U.S. government had not helped in the fall of the Shah. Then he issued a brief statement in El Paso.
What is happening in Iraq and Iran is the consequence of policies this administration has followed during the last 3.5 years. A vacillating foreign policy and a weakened defense capability are largely to blame. It is up to President Carter now to decide what role the United States must play.
Bill Plant, CBS News, with the Reagan campaign in El Paso.
Another in our series of weekly special reports, Campaign Countdown, will be broadcast tonight at 11:30, 10:30 Central Time.
When that sun breaks out, lift up your head and shout, it's gonna be a great day.
Okay, stuntman.
Kellogg's waits for you, that spirit comes shining through, promising you a great day.
Action.
K-E-double-L, oh, it's double good. Start Kellogg's way.
100 years, the United Brotherhood of Carpenters has served to improve conditions for American and Canadian workers. UBC men and women are construction workers, maintenance workers, and service and industrial workers. In the UBC, you are the union. The members vote on issues and elect officers. UBC membership means better wages, working conditions, and benefits. The United Brotherhood of Carpenters, workers helping workers to better their lives. Join us. Call toll-free today.
In the wake of last week's explosion of that Titan II missile, the House Armed Services Committee is looking into the safety of that aging weapon, which experts argue is still vital to the nation's defense. Neil Strasser reports.
Air Force Secretary Hans Mark displayed a massive, close to 10-pound wrench socket of the type that fell 70 feet in the missile silo and ruptured the Titan's fuel tank. Mark insisted the accident had nothing to do with the age of the 17-year-old missile, but resulted from an apparent violation of safety procedures by maintenance crewmen that might have happened at any time. Nevertheless, he revealed there are questions about what followed, why there wasn't enough water to completely flood the silo, and why the Air Force Command overrode the on-site safety team's recommendation to vent the tank and accepted a recommendation by Martin Marietta Corporation, the manufacturer, to do nothing.
The difference there, ladies and gentlemen, is essentially this, that if you vent the tank, then the pressure equalizes, and if you don't vent it, the fuel going down draws a vacuum on it. But the contractor's assessment was that the tank would sustain that kind of behavior. What they said was that the top would buckle in, but that the sides would maintain their integrity. And consequently, their recommendation was that we simply wait and let it stabilize.
But apparently the tank did collapse, causing the explosion. Mark said, pending the outcome of an accident study, he isn't sure whether venting was possible. But some committee members disagree and believe the Air Force made an error in judgment. The Air Force report on the accident is expected within a month. Neil Strasser, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
With the state's coffers overflowing with oil money, the Alaska legislature voted today to repeal the state income tax and refund about $185 million to taxpayers. The Justice Department and the Chicago School Board have agreed on perhaps the most sweeping desegregation plan ever undertaken. It will attempt to tackle the causes of segregated communities in an attempt to get at the segregated school problem. The government will set up a federal task force to help minorities find jobs and housing in Chicago suburbs, and it will try to make the center city more attractive to keep white families living there. Busing is provided for but de-emphasized. The agreement goes into effect next September. The FBI reports that serious crimes led by rape rose 9.1% in 1979 over 78. That was the biggest jump in 4 years. Rapes were up 13.2%, robberies were up 12%, aggravated assault 10%, and murder up 9.7%.
The 1981 Buick Riviera is to automobiles what the Golden Gate is to bridges. What the World Series is to baseball. What the 4th of July is to fireworks. The 1981 Buick Riviera is the ultimate reason for going to your Buick dealer. The V6, V8, or diesel-powered Buick Riviera.
It's no secret that some people are just a little careless, and that's bad enough. But when they push up the cost of your business insurance, that's adding insult to injury. So if the other guy is running up your insurance, see your independent Safeco agent for help. For quality business insurance on just about anything you own, build, or drive. After all, it's the people we don't insure that make Safeco such a good deal for those we do.
The House Ethics Committee voted today in favor of expelling convicted Congressman Michael Myers, a Pennsylvania Democrat, for his involvement in the Abscam scandal. The committee planned to rush its recommendation to the House by midnight to hasten a floor vote on it. Mariah McLaughlin reports.
Congressman Myers appeared before the committee to plead with his colleagues that they not recommend that he be thrown out of the House after his conviction in his Abscam trial. The committee viewed the government tapes, which the government says shows Myers taking a bribe. Myers said he never did anything for the money, never intended to, but he admitted, "I looked at it as a way to pick up some easy money." Myers' only defender, Congressman Austin Murphy, was shaken after viewing the tapes. He termed Myers' performance a vulgar one, and he said Myers should be disciplined but not expelled. Special counsel to the committee, Barrett Prettyman, said this man must not remain one day longer as a member of the House. He must be expelled. Myers thought otherwise.
I did not sell my office out. I did not do anything illegal or criminal. I did some unethical things that this body and this committee certainly has jurisdiction over. But the unethical behavior that I displayed certainly does not warrant expulsion.
After a day-long debate in the committee, the chairman announced the bad news for Myers.
Decision was 10-2, recommending to the House that Representative Myers be expelled from the House.
Congressman Myers faces re-election in November, and the Ethics Committee is hoping that the full House will vote to expel him before then. Mariah McLaughlin, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
A veteran State Department official has been charged with taking kickbacks for almost $5 million worth of rice contracts for the scandal-shot Cambodian relief program. The amount of alleged kickbacks would have bought almost 300 more tons of rice. Fred Graham reports.
There have been widespread reports that rice sent to feed the refugees has been diverted and sold by Cambodian officials, but this is the first case of alleged corruption involving an American. Last night in a Washington, D.C. motel room, a representative of a rice brokerage firm in Thailand met with George Warner, the AID official in charge of rice seed purchases for the refugees. But the television set in the motel room was in fact a camouflaged FBI camera, and the room had been bugged for sound. The Justice Department said today that it has videotapes of the rice broker handing Warner $9,000 in cash, the final payment of a $138,000 bribe allegedly paid by the rice brokers for the right to handle U.S. rice seed purchases. Warner was arrested as he left the room. The State Department inspector who investigated the case said the rice brokers informed on Warner because he was the first U.S. official to demand kickbacks and because he threatened to cut off their contracts if they did not pay.
My understanding is that while this type of activity, that is making payments in exchange for an official act, is not unusual, it is done in somewhat of a gentlemanly fashion there. And
no
that
threats.
There are not threats made.
And he made threats.
He did make threats, yes.
Warner was arraigned before a U.S. magistrate on charges of defrauding the government, which carries a maximum term of 5 years in prison. Fred Graham, CBS News, Washington.
A road worker was killed today and 20 persons were injured, 4 of them critically, in a school bus crash near Show Low, Arizona. That's about 175 miles northeast of Phoenix. Authorities said a small gas tank on a highway sweeper ruptured when the bus hit it. Flames swept through the bus, which carried 34 school children aged 7 to 17. The Interstate Commerce Commission has approved what could become the largest corporate merger in railroad history. It would link the Chessie system and seaboard coastlines industries into a 27,000-mile freight rail network. It will stretch from Ontario, Canada to Miami, serving 22 states and the District of Columbia. The domestic auto sales slump continued through mid-September. In the 10 business days ending September 11th, Chrysler sales were down 59% from last year, Ford off 39%, and General Motors down almost 37%. The stock market today was up in heavy trading.
You're some kind of a woman, you can do anything you want to. You know you got what it takes to make it, got what it takes to make it on your own.
Women of America, we're building things on our own, and Georgia Pacific salutes that with a gift. Free plans for terrific building projects at Georgia Pacific registered dealers everywhere.
You're some kind of a woman, you got what it takes to make it on your own.
Call to find the Georgia Pacific registered dealer near you.
Flour, whole grain wheat and rye, bran and flaxseed meal make Roman meal products light brown and delicious.
In each product baked by Roman meat, there's something you can see. The color of the wheat and bran and rye, it's there naturally.
You'll find Roman meal breads and other fresh baked products in the Roman meal section.
President Carter may go ahead with the sale of enriched uranium to India, a transaction he contended is needed to persuade India, which has a nuclear weapons capability, to accept international safeguards. The House had voted to block the sale, but the Senate voted 48 to 46 today to permit it. Both chambers would have had to vote against the sale to prevent it. It was an unprecedented vote in the state of Maine yesterday, the first referendum in United States history aimed at shutting down a nuclear plant. Pro and anti-nuclear activists poured almost $1 million into the campaign involving Maine Yankee. And in spite of a 3-2 margin in favor of keeping the plant open, fallout from the issue lingers on. Chris Kelly reports.
60% of Maine's voters apparently decided that future energy costs and economic development are more important than the potential danger of a nuclear accident.
I don't think this was an endorsement of nuclear power in any sense. I think there were a range of issues that were considered by the Maine voter. Issues such as not increasing our dependence on foreign oil, as well as the economy.
Although they won a solid victory, pro-nuclear forces did not regard the outcome as a mandate to expand nuclear plants, either in Maine or elsewhere.
I think they have seen that although there is a significant majority of people in Maine that want to continue with the operating nuclear plants, there is an obvious concern on the part of the general public for future nuclear development.
Closing the $250 million plant, which supplies 1/3 of Maine's electricity, would have increased power costs by an estimated 30%. While anti-nuclear forces failed to close the plant, they expressed satisfaction at getting maximum publicity for their cause and a significant share of the vote.
When you deal with nuclear power, you're dealing with a potential risk and a hidden risk. And the dollar risk, especially in a state which has the poorest per capita income in the Union, is a present and real risk to people. And I think that that's a good deal to overcome.
Despite the vote, debate over Maine Yankee is not finished. The people who oppose nuclear power here today file the papers necessary for yet another referendum aimed at closing down Maine Yankee. Chris Kelly, CBS News, Wiscasset, Maine.
And that's the way it is. Wednesday, September 24th, 1980, the 326th day of captivity for the American hostages in Iran. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
Falcon Parcel Service in Mountain View, California runs their Chevy Chevette fleet 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they know Chevette's durable enough to stay in service. To be in any business today, you've got to cover a lot of territory. And that's one of the reasons you'll see Chevy Chevette working all over the country. And starring in the Joey Chitwood Thrill Show, the 1981 Chevy Chevette, one tough son of a gun.
So you're saying I'll make more money if I use cheaper ingredients and fillers?
Yes, you will.
No, I won't. Young man, you might know bookkeeping, but you don't know a thing about Hillshire Farm smoked sausage. People buy my smoked sausage in Polska Kielbasa because I make it with farm fresh cuts of pork and beef, hand-trimmed, lean and tender.
Dinner's ready.
Quality meat makes Hillshire Farm
Delicious. I wouldn't change a thing.
Hillshire Farm, now with recipes right on the label.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
He's a strange, mysterious creature with superhuman strength, the Incredible Hulk. He's waiting for you when Bill Bixby stars Friday nights at 7 here on the CBS Television Network.
That story and more next on Eyewitness News.
One of the specials this week at Buy Right in Foodtown, fresh ground beef, 3 pounds or more for only $1.29 a pound. That's this week only at your savings system. Buy Right in Foodtown stores.
Shopping for brand name values is easier when you have the Fall Shopper Circular from True Value Hardware stores. You'll find great buys like this lightweight True Temper rake for yard cleanups and this sturdy Empire push broom for sweeping outdoor surfaces. Take care of clippings and trash with extra strong True Value lawn and leaf bags. Cut logs with